Things just took a major turn for the Toronto Blue Jays. We have multiple huge updates to go over today, including one update surrounding a starting pitcher that has fans fired up. We're going to break down exactly who that is and discuss what it means going forward, as well as a ton of other updates ahead of tonight's game. But before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, so thank you guys for that as we're on the road to, of course, the huge goal of 20,000 subscribers. But a lot to go over today. I remember talking about a pitcher who hasn't pitched for the Jays in a very long time, but things are starting to take a turn for the better, and that is no one else but Alek Manoah. And we have a ton of updates here, as well as some other players, because the Jays are in desperate need of some reinforcements here, especially with the starting rotation as things start to get more interesting regarding that end. But Buck Martinez came out with an update, which we'll dive into in a minute, giving an actual timeline. But let's start with this update here. And Alek Manoah provided reporters with an update and status during the Jays' recent visit to Tampa. And Manoah has been rehabbing from his Tommy John surgery, and he said he's aiming to be back in August, which would roughly be a 14-month absence since, of course, he underwent Tommy John surgery. And as with any recovery from UCL surgery, this timeline is pretty fluid. He's still in bullpen session phases, so he has a ways to go before returning to his own minor league work and his rehab there. But ladies and gentlemen, we're now aiming for an August return. And of course, when he went down with Tommy John surgery and we said, it'd be August, and I've been saying on the channel for a while that around August, since, he's going to be returning, it seemed like so far away. We're in May now, about to be in June. August is only a couple of months away here. And Alek Manoah is a player who has as much upside as any Toronto Blue Jays player, starting pitcher or position player. And we've seen he had Cy Young caliber seasons. And for him to be now inching closer to a return, this Blue Jays team is going to have a very busy summer. And I think that, they lost yesterday's game. The offense desperately needs some work. Ross Atkins is going to have to get on the phone here and start making some phone calls for hitters, for pitchers, for everything. And I had a video yesterday regarding the bullpen and how he's going to have to start making some moves there. But for now, Alek Manoah, he is inching closer to a return. And if he comes back healthy in August, whenever it ends up being, you pair that with some returns, which we'll dive into later here. Nick Sandlin, Eric Swanson, hopefully Max Scherzer. The team is going to look vastly different and is going to be a lot deeper than they initially were. And you can see here, he was once one of the best pitchers in baseball. And at the bottom there, this is something to keep in mind as well. It is anyone's guess as to how Manoah may look once he makes his return. But you add him to the rotation of Gausman, Berríos, Bassett, and then you have Manoah. And if Scherzer comes back healthy, you also have Bowden Francis. There is a lot of opportunity here for this Blue Jays team to make a big push in the second half of the year. But it all, of course, and we'll dive into this later in the video, comes down to the offense, which was absolutely terrible yesterday. It's been terrible over the past week. And if they don't get it together soon, week, 2 weeks, it's been horrible most of the year, it doesn't matter how good Alek Manoah is going to be. It doesn't matter how good a lot of these starting pitchers will be. However, if you go ahead and you bring a guy like Alek Manoah back, you're in a very good spot. And Buck Martinez came out and he gave a bit more specifics. He said, early August, between the first and second week of August is when he's expected to return to action to the big league club. And it's going to be a very exciting time because you look at his stats. Now, of course, if you've been following for a while, we know how good Alek Manoah was in his first couple of years. Of course, his first year, fantastic. He got called up as made his major league debut, struck out Aaron Judge against the Yankees, all these different things. But 2022, Alek Manoah put up a 6 WAR, 2.34 ERA, and struggled in 2023. And I think a lot of people forget how good he was last year in his brief stint. In 5 games, he put up a 3.7 ERA. And the reason that this Tommy John surgery was so impactful for him, but also this team, of course, last year was a bit of a punt year. They ended up being very bad due to a lot of these injuries. But he was very, very, he was starting to return to his 2022 self. Of course, he wasn't fully there, but before his injury, he was looking very good. And of course, he was dealing with injuries before his Tommy John surgery. He was missing some time. He was sent down, to AAA, all these different things. But he came back and he looked so good. He looked very good. Like the old Alek Manoah, his slider was absolutely electric. And I remember that very vividly, how good he was back, last season, right before he got that Tommy John surgery and before the injury. And I think he has a real big chance here to help this team be competitive. And I don't think this is a year where the Jays are going to tank. They're going to go all the way. They're going to go in for it. And once the trade deadline approaches here in July, August, there's going to be moves made for the Blue Jays. And it could be a 2015 similar type situation where you're hovering around 500. You make a bunch of moves and you hope that this team can get some electricity on offense from either people they bring in or Bichette, Vladdy. And I do have a ton of faith in this team still, and Alek Manoah is going to help with that a lot, of course, as well. But regarding some of the other guys, they have 5, 6 important pitchers on the IL right now. Jimmy Garcia recently put on the 15-day IL. an update for him. Again, he received his cortisone shot. He's going to hopefully come back in a couple weeks. Hopefully no more time than that. But at the same time, there's no timeline for his return at this juncture, aside from, of course, the 15-day injured list report there. So that's going to be rough. And then, of course, Nick Sandlin, he's inching closer and closer to a return. We also have Spencer Turnbull, who made his debut yesterday. Not made his debut, but made his starting pitching. Made a good impact there. 4 1/3 innings, gave up 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, just dominated a single A ball in Dunedin. And they're hoping that his next start will be all the way up in AAA. So Spencer Turnbull's a guy, and we've been covering him on the channel since they acquired him and Jose Urena, and signed him, I guess, rather. He's going to be a very important factor to this team. And I'm talking about Alek Manoah, all these different things, until Max Scherzer comes back. And who knows how healthy Scherzer's going to be if he comes back, because it's a real world where he doesn't. But assuming he does, Spencer Turnbull is going to be a guy that if he can be a solid, he was great last year. If he can be a solid starter, they might not even, they're going to have to juggle some things, whether that's a 6-person, starting rotation. And again, I don't want to get him ahead of myself, but depending on how good Alek Manoah is, let's say a perfect world, Alek Manoah is great, Spencer Turnbull is great, all these different guys, then you're in very good shape going forward for this, starting rotation. But the biggest, thing is going to be, of course, hitting. But as it pertains, quickly before I wrap up, to Nick Sandlin, he threw another bullpen session on Monday. He'll throw another one in Toronto later this week. And of course, next step after that, we'll be facing live hitters. Ryan Burge suffered a setback. He is, there's no update on him. So Burge's going to be out for a bit. Nick Sandlin's inching closer to a return. And then, of course, you have Eric Swanson inching closer to a return. All these different guys. So it's going to be exciting to see what this team does, especially when there's a lot of, the pitching staff is looking pretty solid. It's gonna be interesting there. But one thing before I wrap up, I just want to touch on Anthony Santander. And Keegan Madison came out and he said that's a hitter saying that he's changing how he's approaching at bats. That gets worrying at this point. And of course, we're gonna have a full video covering this. But Anthony Santander has been struggling, and he came out and basically said that he's trying to avoid his. He's not trying to swing as hard because he's dealing with injuries and his power is not. He might make more contact, but he's not gonna hit for as much power. The team is in the gutter right now offensively, and a lot of that is due to Santander's lack of production, and even to a degree Vladdy and Bo's lack of production, because coming into this year, we knew in order for this team to be elite, everything would have had to go right. And Vladdy's been okay offensively, Bo's been okay offensively, but they're going to need both of those guys to be elite offensive players, and you're getting basically 0 from Anthony Santander. You're getting a negative value from Santander this season. So either they're going to have to turn a corner very, very soon, or the team's going to be in a very rough spot for, offensively, because the pitching staff has been really, really good. You lose a game 2-0 yesterday to the Rangers. The Rangers offense has been terrible this season, has been terrible as of late, and your pitching staff does their job, and you're not able to squeeze out a win, inching closer to 500. You're back now to 2 games below 500. Hopefully they can take care of business today, but things are going to get interesting, and they're going to get interesting fast, and hopefully the Jays, the offense can pick things up. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are on all this, and hopefully we'll see some offense tonight. Cheers.